Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And today our special guest on Cool Your Heels with Lillian is Julie Keys, who wrote a book called Poised for Exit, a woman entrepreneur's guide to business transitions. And I know as a woman entrepreneur, there isn't a lot of books out there targeting what women-owned businesses go through, which is a little bit different than men-owned businesses. So good morning, Julie. How are you doing?
Good morning, Lillian. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I am delighted that you're here because I really think it's important to other women to bond with other businesswomen and really learn the ropes as a woman entrepreneur. And I believe your book will do that. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit of background about you so they can understand why you wrote the book in the first place?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. To your point, when you first started out, you said that, it's different for women and there isn't a lot out there, and you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I could find nothing that actually focused on women entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to preparing a business for transition. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been an entrepreneur most of my adult life. I'm in my late 50s right now. I started a business with my husband in 1989, and we ran 3 companies over the course of 23 years together, had 4 kids together, and then sold the company and the marriage ended. And so I needed to figure out what was next for me. I knew that I wanted to be a business owner again. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I started a 2-year discernment process over what that was going to be and what it looked like. And I came to the conclusion that I needed to be able to use the talents and skills that I'd learned over the years to help other people, both men and women. And so I became a business consultant and helped business owners to grow and improve their business through strategic planning and implementation, through leadership development, and so on, sales process, things like that. And then I started acquiring clients who were of the age where they really needed to start planning their transition, but they didn't know where to start or who to talk to. So I started doing my own research, writing books, giving, workshops, things like that. Learned about the Exit Planning Institute in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a certification program for advisors in different disciplines to become certified exit planners. And so I went through that program and received the credential of certified exit planner, and that was in 2015. And so now the work that I do with business owners, both men and women, is to help them personally prepare for transition, which there's a lot to that. We can talk about it a little bit in a second. But secondly, to help them get their businesses ready, because by and large, according to survey data, most companies are not transferable. Yet, we have between 12 and 13 million baby boomer businesses that will need to transition in less than 10 years, okay? We've been on that road now for a few years, and so it really is less than 10. And if you look at the statistics and how old people are who still own businesses that need to transition, it's pretty scary when you think about the fact that most of them aren't ready. And so I wrote this book for business owners, both men and women, but I focused on women because I went through it myself, and it is different. There's different nuances to it. It isn't just the business that you own and run and your employees. Usually you're wearing several other hats, right, aside from owning and running a company. And so I address that in the book too.
And I think that a lot of people, men or women, they do not really have what I call business contingency plans. Now, I always have a contingency plan, so I have a pretty good idea of how to transition and what I need to know. But a lot of people don't. I think it's because they believe they'll live forever or they'll just hand it over to the next generation in the family. But you still have to prepare paperwork And more importantly, you have to prepare the transition because we're talking about power, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a CEO of a company, you have a lot more power than a president, vice president, management, and the staff. And yet they expect certain things from you, and you need to deliver that from those expectations as well as positioning your company for the next step and whatever direction you choose to go in.
That's correct. Yeah, I think that's just a common area of unknown, information. There's, the realm of what we don't know that we don't know. That's where we get into lots of trouble. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that business owners aren't aware. They don't know where to start when, they get busy in their business. But truly, it isn't just about how the business owner plans or doesn't plan. And contingency planning is part of exit planning. But it's all of the stakeholders that are going to be affected by a good or bad transition, not just the families of the owners, but all the employees, all the vendors, all the suppliers, all the customers, the community, the local economy, the families of the employees. I mean, when you think about all the stakeholders in a transition, it's quite a bit of people, right? And the ripple effect of a good or bad transition is long-lasting and can affect a lot of lives in a good or bad way. So the economic impact of businesses not transitioning is farther reaching, I think, than a lot of people are realizing or paying attention to.
I think people need to look at business transitioning the same way they look at providing their doctor and their kids with a living will, going to a lawyer and making sure your estate is in good order, and get the papers ready for that, make sure they know what kind of medication's on. It's something that you have to consider. It's an end of life for your company as it was known, and it's going to new ownership. And yet people in the United States defer getting a living will. They defer having what's going to transpire when they pass on because they figure they're going to live forever. And companies don't live forever either. If you take a look at the pandemic and then you take a ride around town, what do you see? You see a lot of restaurants close down.
Right.
It's just for the beginning. And then you also see banks that are on limited hours. And you see people who worked in the bank may no longer be working there. Take a look at the school districts and all the schools and see the ripple effect economically with the teachers.
Yeah, the far-reaching impact of this pandemic has been way beyond what I think anybody was ever ready for or expected. But I will say that the business owners, regardless of the size of the company, regardless of the industry, the ones who actually had done some planning, and not just contingency planning, which is super important, and there's a lot to contingency planning, but also just having a well-run, well-oiled machine where people knew what was expected of them. Roles are defined, systems are in place, cybersecurity is in place, all of those kinds of things, like if this happens, then that. Who do we call if, the system goes down? Who do we, what happens if, we lose our biggest customer? And should we ever even be in a position where we have any one customer or client that provides us with more than 25% of our revenue? The answer is no, but it can happen, and what do you do? And so having answers to those questions and plans in place, even if you got to pivot, you pivot, but at least you have some kind of direction. So hopefully the folks that are listening today have gone through some pretty rough waters and have learned some lessons about what they weren't prepared for, and how to get ready and be more prepared if there is another wave, or if we do end up, God forbid, going through something like this again in the future. So when we talk about exit planning, transition planning, exit is a form of transition. I just want to be clear on what transition planning is. When we talk about buying out a partner, when we talk about an ESOP, when we talk about a management buyout or a private equity purchase where we're, getting rid of some of the chips on the table, doing a partial sale and staying involved for a few years, those are all forms of transition. Okay, an exit, a complete exit from a business is a part of a transition, is a form of a transition. And so it's important for business owners to think about well ahead of time, what do I really want? Do I want to leave a legacy? Is it important for me that the name of this company and the culture of this company lives on? And if that's the case, then a focus needs to be made on how that transition is going to look, how long you're going to stay involved. Many times when we want to leave a legacy, that involves an internal sale where we're talking about family members taking over or management or both or part of that. Sometimes an owner can find interested buyers from a private equity standpoint who are interested in buy and hold, and they want to maintain the legacy of the company because the brand is so strong. Those are some questions, right, that business owners need to be asking very early. And women tend to be very nurturing, and we tend to protect. And so we can get in the way of making sound business decisions because we are so attached to our business owners or our businesses and our employees because they're like our family. You know what I mean? And at least I went through that. And and I wrote about that. In fact, the book talks about several stories of different clients that I've had over the years that have gone through a process. Some were better than others. But I think it's important to tell stories because we learn from them. But anyway, just to think about that, think about the future, what you really want. I think that asking women what they really want is also a difficult thing because we are in charge of so many things we can't imagine having and doing what we really want ourselves. And so we get out of touch with who we are and what we really want because we're so busy taking care of everybody and everything else. And that's not everybody, but it's a tendency, right?
Yes. And one of the things you need to remember, and I'll use my company as an example, my company's starting really to grow this year. So I had to include a lot more staff to manage the company. And one of the first questions, thank you, and one of the first questions I was asked was, well, you're kind of old. And I said, yes, decrepit here. And he says, no, what are you going to do? And I said, I hope that I can find somebody who's interested already in this station and will buy me out, but let me stick around, not a CEO, but let me stick around to do some of the programs that I still love to do and earn a salary. Mm-hmm. And they said, that's a great idea. So we wrote up the paperwork for it so that when that time comes and I find somebody, preferably young, since it's an internet station and internet belongs to the young, not to the old, they'll come in, buy it, and let me stick around, and I'll still get a little money on the side as income. But folks, you know what? You have to sit down and talk to everybody on staff because it affects everybody. And you've got to tell the truth. You can't have any little secrets or anything. Or I know a good angel investor. You can't muddy the waters like that. Whatever you have to say, you have to get out. You have to write it out. You have a lawyer go over it. And now the plan's in place. So when and if it comes for me to leave, everything is set up. And I already have somebody waiting to be a first refusal for the company. But I didn't read Julie's book. But to me, it was just common sense. And I have a lot of business common sense. So apparently I did the right thing. Now, Julie, you have 9 ways to make sure your business is properly posed for exit. You want to go over them?
Are you talking about the chapters in the book?
In the press release, they said, Keith recommends the following 9 ways to make sure your business is properly posed. The first one is determine what to do. And I think it's important you go over these 9 keys, if nothing else, to give people an idea of the fact, of the content that you have in this book to help them get their company posed for a transition, whatever kind of transition.
Exactly. Well, I think that the number one thing that business owners need to do is they need to assemble a good, strong team of advisors. So, Lillian, to your point about with the lawyer and getting an agreement drafted, I think that that's super important once you've decided what direction you want to take. But you really need to know what your options are. And if you don't have any options because the business is completely dependent upon you, or you've got customer concentration, or you found that you have a terminal illness and you need to exit right now, unfortunately, that does happen to people. And unfortunately, the older we get as business owners, the higher the likelihood of something like that happening. So the earlier you plan, the better. So assemble a strong team. And like I said, de-risk the business in terms of customer concentration, in terms of having the business be dependent upon you. You should be able to take a 2-week vacation without any problems of things falling apart. If you sign all the checks and you can't ever get away, then that business is not transferable. It is completely dependent upon you. In other words, if you go away, the business goes away. And if you found that your business is more a lifestyle business that supports your lifestyle versus an actual company or an asset that you can transfer, it doesn't mean that you can't turn it into an asset. But it's going to take some work. And waiting is not going to serve you, okay? So assemble a team. Focus on good diversity in terms of customers and clients. Make sure that you do not have a company that's super dependent upon you. When it comes to your people are your biggest asset. The most important, valuable thing that you have in your business is your staff. And if you have key people that your business needs to be able to operate efficiently and profitably, then you want to make sure that you have them retained in some formal fashion, whether it's an employment agreement or whatever it is that you're able to put together with your employment law attorney. You want to have some way of retaining them, because if they find out that you're thinking about selling, not everybody's that excited about that. A lot of people get scared and they leave. And if they leave and they have all kinds of intellectual property about the business in their head that's not documented, then you're going to have a hard time replacing that person. So that's the next thing. Make sure that you have your systems and your processes well documented. Another would be to have a sales process. If there's one thing that I find many times in companies, it's that they have sales departments. They have people that are called salespeople, but most of them, first of all, aren't selling, really. You know, the old adage of take 10 salespeople and 9 of them are selling the same amount collectively as one. All right, so it's usually one that rises above or 2, depending on how many you have. But it's 10 to 20% of the salespeople do 80 to 90% of the sales, and that's just the way it is. So if you find that you've got dead weight in your sales department, then you should probably cut that out, save yourself some money. Salespeople should be compensated according to what they can produce. I don't believe in salary for salespeople unless it's a small base, and there has to be a process. They need to know what you expect. Many business owners will print up business cards and brochures and hand them to the salespeople and say, hey, go sell something. But they have no idea what's expected of them. They really don't even know what their market is, their target, how is marketing supporting what they're trying to do. So that's a two-way street, right? We can blame our salespeople all day long for not selling, but if we're not supporting them and giving them the tools that they need and giving them metrics to follow and goals, then you're just setting them up to sell. And I find that sales is almost always hurting in every company that I work with. You know, sales are flat or declining, and that's not a good thing if you're going to try to sell or transition. It takes 2-3 years to pull that out and get yourself back into a positive trajectory. And then marketing is another area. Marketing isn't many times not measured. They have no idea if the marketing that they're doing is actually working, and so the marketing really needs to be able to drive sales, drive leads, and it needs to be monitored. You have to have a good marketing plan with someone who actually implements and works it on a regular basis. With a smaller company, it's tough. People have to wear a lot of different hats, so you almost have to work with someone on the outside. Another area that's very important for you to focus on, especially now, because cybercrime is at an all-time high, you need to secure your systems. Your IT support people are worth their weight in gold right now. There's just an epidemic of compromised business email. And I'm involved in a private group that's run by the FBI, and I get involved in a lot of their webinars just to hear more about what's going on in the world because it affects my clients, and I want them to know what they need to be watching out for. And there's not a question of if you're going to be, compromised. It's a question of when. And so all of your staff needs to be treated and trained to know, what to look for, what not to open. If something comes up, who do they talk to, that kind of thing. And it would save a lot in ransomware cases. That's just one aspect of IT. There's a lot of other ones. But, I don't know if we've gone through all the 9 or not, but that's most of them. And if you want more information, just buy the book,
Absolutely.
Everything's there. The checklists are in there. I made the book inspirational and instructional. So there's some insight there, some introspective questions you can ask yourself that every business owner needs to, and then a few things that you can do yourself to help yourself get ready so that when you do meet with your advisors, you're not starting from behind the 8 ball, if you know what I mean, because a lot of the things that they're going to do with you and for you, they're going to charge for. And if you've got a little bit of your homework done ahead of time, then you're going to save yourself some money in fees because you got to have that advice. You got to have those people on your team.
Absolutely.
No question.
And the other things people need, especially women, need to consider is, number one, since it is a small company that I own, every staff member knows not only their own job, but what the other person is doing as well. So if something happens, they can just step in and do it. And if you don't have discretionary income coming in for that particular month for whatever reason, it will save you the trouble of trying to get a temporary in, number one. Number two, with your marketing, make sure your people who are selling understand their product and the services. If you have to, make it a game and test them on that. But they've got to know what they are talking about, because when they're making their presentation, they're going to be asked questions about that product and service, and they have to be able to answer it. Just like with Julie in her book, is CNBC comes along and starts asking her a lot of questions, she better know the answers to them. She can't say, well, get back with me after I read the book again to make sure I know what I'm talking about, because that won't fly. Okay? And some people I interviewed, that's exactly what they say. But you can't have your salesperson saying that, because your salesperson is your company. They're not representing your company, but they are your company. So anything that your company is trying to sell, they have to make sure they're presenting not only the product and service, but your company.
Right. That being the face of the company is a pretty important role.
Yes, and I think a lot of people tend to ignore that. And it's important, because that's how you build up the value of your company, folks.
Yeah, when we're talking about selling, yes, for sure, building value.
Building value. And when I put together my exit plan and everything, that was one of the first questions potential investor asked me. What is the value of your company? And you just can't say, oh, it's $5 million, because they won't buy it. They want to know what the value is. Like the stock market and the value of stuff that you buy from individual stocks, that's the same thing. So read her book, and you'll understand what we're talking about. It's important.
I think, going back to my emphasis on having a good team of advisors is really paramount to building a foundation for trying to build value, because when you have a good relationship with your lawyer, and they help you to mitigate risk in your business. When you have a good relationship with your accounting firm, and they're actually not just doing your taxes, but they're actually giving you good business advice, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So if that's not happening, you need to find another firm. When you have a good relationship with your financial planner, those three are the most important people for your advisory team. You also need to have a good, solid relationship with your bank, with your commercial lender at that bank, and your insurance agent. And when the time comes for you to decide if you're going to transition internally or externally, your M&A attorney, your mergers and acquisitions attorney would be able to give you, or business attorney, would be able to help you figure out what the pros and cons would be. But they're not going to be an exit planner. So if you really want good, solid exit planning advice, someone who can walk with you through the process, help you implement the process so you can keep your foot on the gas with your business, which is what you should do, because a lot of times business owners don't. They try to DIY this thing, and then the value of the business goes down because they've got their eye off the ball, you know. So you really do need to have some help. Somebody's got to quarterback the thing, you know. And whether you work with me or you work with someone like me, there aren't too many people out there actually that do what I do, but there are some. And, you know, do your research, figure out where they are. I know some people actually in Pennsylvania, so if you've got a good audience in Pennsylvania, I can refer people from almost every state actually that do exit planning. But, you know, we're in a virtual world, so you can pretty much work with anybody from anywhere. Are we at a point now, Lillian, where you'd like me to invite the listeners for a couple of things that they could do, action items? Or
yes, you have actually, and if we don't finish everything today, I'm definitely going to bring you back anyway. But yes, you have.
Okay.
Why don't we save that for the second interview? But you can tell everybody where they can find you on the World Wide Web. And I just have one more thing to add. If you're planning to keep your business in the family, one of the things you can do, because I did look into this, is I set up a trust for all my investments. So when I pass, it's already set and determined it's going to go straight to my grandkids' college, which is like owning a business anyway. And but I also put my company in the trust in case it didn't sell. And that way, it would pass ownership to the grandkids, who then can decide whether they want to hang on to it or sell it. And it's something for you to think about if you're not really sure at the moment how you want to transition your company. Because with the pandemic, people died, and they weren't prepared.
Right.
Either with their business or with their personal business. So it's just a thought. And, yes, I have an estate lawyer who deals directly with seniors. So I'm 69. So if you're 60 up and you're still owning a business, go see an estate planner who specializes in geriatric law, because it's a little bit different from the rest of the bunch who are still healthy, and find out what you need to do to take the proper steps to protect your company. Your employees will thank you.
Yeah, and so will the family. And, you know, because I've been a business owner most of my life, I really feel every entrepreneur out there who's listening deserves to have a successful transition. I want to see every one of them exit on their own terms and not someone else's. That's my tagline. You know, build enterprise value today so you can exit on your own terms tomorrow. And that's really my philosophy. That's what I believe. That's what I want. That's what I've lived. I didn't have the best exit myself, but I've lived it through my clients and helping them with having a better opportunity and a better experience than what I had. I didn't have anybody to help me. And so if for people that are listening right now, if you want more information, I've got a couple of websites. I'm just going to direct you to the book's website, poisedforexit.com. So poised, Poised, for exit.com. and you'll be able to find the podcast recordings from the past you can listen to, and you can also order the book from the website. And I'm also offering a 30-minute consult for anybody who's listening. It's complimentary. So if you're interested, you can contact me through the website and we can get something set up.
That's terrific. I was hoping you would say to contact you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
Absolutely.
and adults of all ages, remember the book, Poised for Exit, A Woman's Entrepreneur's Guide to Business Transitions. Men, you're welcome to buy the book and read it in case you don't know what to do when the end comes. The author is Julie Keith, and you can listen to this interview, Cool Your Heels with Lillian, interviewing Julie Keith all over again, next Tuesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. on AMFM247.com, on https://passionateworldtalkradio.com, menu, right-hand side. Scroll down, Cool Your Heels, click, and there we are. If you don't know how to use your cell phone and your grandkids are at school, we have a sizzle line, which means you pick up your regular phone, dial in the number, and you can listen to it automatically. It's also on iTunes, iHeart, Amazon, Alexa, also on Spreaker, Spotify, Podchaser, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Name your poison, it's there. And before you go away and stray, Mr. Justice Darling had this to say in 1889, a timid question will always receive a confident answer. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning and listening to Julie Keith talk about her book, Poised for Exit, A Woman's Entrepreneur's Guide to Business Transitions. Thank you very much for listening, and remember, stay healthy.
Thanks, Lillian. Thanks, everybody.